Good morning, everyone. In the last session, we identified the basic example on this particular Hibernate here. So we identified with inserting the two records here. The first one, with help of this particular sections, we inserted one record here, like a message object we created, and we call the session dot save method. And another important section here, we load with help of this particular load method as well as, so we use another approach, session dot find here. Okay, so using this particular two method, we load the object from the database and we set this particular same object here. Now, what we'll understand here, so today we'll understand so what are the basic interfaces we are going to use and what are the classes we are going to use and how the each and every interfaces and the classes are going to work internally, we are going to understand here. Okay, so this is the important information. We'll call it as a Hibernate architecture, how this particular architecture is going to work internally. Okay, the first one, what we can understand here, this particular, whatever the programming interfaces we are using, get in the pen. And we need to learn more about the Hibernate interfaces or classes here. So in order to understand the persistence layer of applications, because whatever we are discussing, these are all comes under our persistence mechanism, because everything we are going to communicate it with the databases. So if I want to store or if I want to delete anything, we are going to communicate it with help of this particular Hibernate here. Okay, so and here all the information we cannot identify at one place here, but we'll try to cover up one by one how the each and every interfaces and the classes are going to work internally. Okay, now you can see these interfaces are mainly, these particular interfaces are main point of the dependency application. For example, what are the main interfaces? First one is session. Okay, first one is session, and second one is transaction, and third one is query. These are all the three important interfaces we are going to discuss, because these are all the main dependency of the applications here. Getting the point? So whatever we are going to discuss, these are all the dependency of our applications we need to understand here. Now, along with these particular interfaces, we need to understand another important section about the configuration. Okay, configuration. This particular configuration, it is a class. It will try to provide the more information about the core functionality here. Get in the pen. And along with this, we are going to discuss about the callback interfaces. The callback interfaces is nothing but we can understand about the events. So if you are trying to do something updation or deletion or insertion on the specific object here, this particular classes are going to work here. Okay, the first one is interceptor. Okay, first one is interceptor and the second one is life cycle. Second one is life cycle and third one is validatable. These are all the important the callback here. So whatever the callback we are discussing here, so this will give you the information about how the object Hibernate objects are going to work internally. So these are all the main important section we are going to discuss here. Okay, if this particular interfaces are not suitable, and the default mechanism which is going to provided by the Hibernate, if it is not suitable, we can go for the another implementation classes we have. We can use those particular classes to make the customization. Get in the point. So most of the cases will come up with a default implementation, because Hibernate will give you the more important information by default here. But even though those default implementation is not suitable, we can go for the another important sections called these particular classes, something like user types. This is for the data type of the Java object into the column types here. Okay, so same thing we have a identifier generator. So this particular identifier generator, what it will do this particular section, this particular class will give you the generating on the primary key values. So how we want to generate this particular customization primary key values, we can go for the identifier generator. Otherwise, you can use this particular user type. It will try to use the conversion Java object into the Hibernate object here. So these are all the customization interfaces we have. We can go for this particular interface and you can implement the changes here. Okay, so first we'll understanding the primary dependency interfaces what we are having, and later we'll discuss about this particular sections here. So as I explained here, the first one we are going to discuss about the core interfaces, because without this particular core interfaces, we are not going to write single line of code in our Hibernate. Okay, what are the core interface we are having? We have 5 Hibernate, like 5 core interfaces we are going to use in our Hibernate applications here. Okay, the 5 core interfaces. What are the 5 core interfaces we are having it? We need to understand this. The first one we can understand the session here. Okay, the first one is session. We need to understand more information about this particular session, how it is going to work here. So basically, this particular interfaces, using this particular all the 5 interfaces, we can store and retrieve the data from our databases. So inside this particular 5 interface, we are discussing about the one of the interface called session interface, and session interface is the primary interface. Getting the point? This is the primary interfaces we are going to use in our Hibernate application. Now you can think how much is important this particular primary interface is here. And this session is a lightweighted and inexpensive of create and to destroy the objects here. Basically, this is the one of the primary interfaces we are going to use in our Hibernate application. And the second point here, so it is a lightweighted. Lightweighted is nothing but we can easily maintain this particular the objects here. So which is not going to take much time to create and destroy this particular objects here. And along with this particular session internally, it is not going to contain any another object. Because of this, session is a lightweighted object here. And here it is not going to take much expensive to create and destroy the session object internally. Okay, now you can think how much is like a session is a how much lightweighted object here. And along with this Hibernate, like a session is a not safe. The Hibernate session interface is not safe here. So you cannot perform the multiple threads at a time here. Getting the point? Whenever you are trying to perform the multiple threads at a time, we cannot get the consistent result here. So we cannot identify so what kind of data we are going to get here. Okay, this is important. We need to understand here. The first point, it is a what we can understand here. Session is the primary interface in our Hibernate application, and session is a lightweighted, and it is not going to take much expensive to create and destroy the session object here. And here session is a not thread safe here. We cannot perform the multiple threads at a time here. Okay, and using this particular session, we are going to provide the connection. So between this particular Java objects as well as the databases. So as well as this particular Java object and databases, we are going to provide the connections here. So this is the session interfaces here. It is very important. We need to understand here. And second, another interface we are going to discuss here, something like session factory. Session factory. How this particular session factory it is going to work. So as I explained here, this application of like this particular instance, the session, whatever the session we are discussing here, so which is going to get the object from the session factory here. Because in the last session, now if you see, so session factory dot open session. Session factory dot open session, here we are getting the information from the session factory. Okay, whatever the session object we are creating, the object we are getting from the session factory. And here the session factory, certainly it is not a lightweighted. Session is a lightweighted, but session factory is not a lightweighted. So why it is not a lightweighted here? Because it contain this particular session factory per database, like one session factory, one database here. This is important. Because of that, it is going to contain some additional information here. Because of that, session factory, it is not a lightweight here. Getting the point. And here, so we cannot getting the point. We can share this particular multiple threads because it is a thread safety. We can share whatever the resource we are trying to create. We can share to the multiple threads here. Session is the not thread safe, but session factory is a thread safe here. How many threads we want to communicate, we can communicate. So there is no problem here. And another one is for single session factory we are going to create for the whole applications. Whole application means for all the database. Like how many database we are going to use in our application. So same kind of the session factories we are going to create. For example, databases are 4 and session factories are 3. So we cannot create like this. So databases are 4 and we need to create the session factory objects also 4. This is important, we need to understand here. Okay. So now after this, and here what we can understand this particular section. So session factory, it is going to catch as the generated SQL statements here. Whatever the SQL statements we are going to generate with help of our Java code here. So those just like those SQL statements, it is going to catch it by the session factory. And this particular behavior, it is not having the session information. Getting the point. This is important. We need to understand the differences between session and session factory. Getting the point. Session is a lightweighted. Session factory is not a lightweighted. Okay. And here, so to create the session object, it is not going to take much time creating and destroying this particular session object. But here, session factory, because of not lightweighted, which is going to take some time to create and to destroy the session factory, because session factory may contain the configuration related information and it is contain some additional information here. Getting the point. This is we need to understand here. And internally, session factory will store the generated like a cache related the SQL statements here. But this particular cache behavior, we don't have any inside this particular session here. This is one other important information we need to understand. For each and every database, we are going to create a one session factory. But here, for the each database, we are going to create multiple session object. Multiple session objects. So these are all the important information we need to understand. The differences between session factory and session. And another important class here, the configuration. So the configuration basically, it is used to configure the Hibernate here. Getting the point? So with the help of this particular configuration class, we are going to communicate the Hibernate related section here. And this particular applications, whatever the Hibernate applications we are going to create here, the applications is going to use internally configuration instance to specify the location of this particular mapping document and Hibernate specific configuration documents here. Getting the point. So the first point here basically in the configuration, so it is used to configure the Hibernate application, and inside the Hibernate application, the configuration object, it is going to use the location, like it is going to specify the location of the mapping document as well as the configuration documents. Getting the point. So to work on the Hibernate related applications here. So once this particular configuration object is created, now later with help of this particular configuration, we are going to load the session factory. Okay, we are going to load this particular session factory. This is important here. Now you can see here, we are creating this particular configuration object here. From the configuration object, we are trying to load the session factory by calling the build session factory. Okay, it is trying to load the configuration information, and inside the configuration information, we have mapping informations as well. And internally, what we can understand is session factory dot open session. The open session internally, it is trying to return the session information. And another important, so the interfaces here, something like transactions here. Something like a transaction, how this particular transaction is going to use internally. The transaction basically, it is a Hibernate. Basically, Hibernate is going to managing this particular transaction, their own infrastructure here. whatever this particular transaction we are loading it, and this particular transaction information internally handled by the Hibernate sections here. But here it is one of the optional interface. If you are interested, you can open. Otherwise, by default, Hibernate is going to manage the transaction. If you are trying to write this particular transactions here, what we can understand here, it is a explicit configuration of this particular transactions here. Okay. Now what it will do, whenever we are trying to communicate with the database, if you while inserting or while updating the record, like if you miss any exception, or if you want while inserting, if you get any exception, what happens internally, it will try to roll back the current objects here. Whatever the current object we have here, the objects are going to roll back by this particular transaction. And if I'm not getting any exceptions here successfully, it will update the data into the database here. Okay, so this is one of the important the interface we are discussing here, something like a transactions here. So any questions? As of now, we discuss about the 4 interfaces here. So session factory, and configuration, and transactions here. Okay, so any questions on this particular 4 interfaces? Okay, so if you don't have anything, now what we will do, we'll move on to the another important interfaces. So far we did not discuss about that, but we are going to discuss in our upcoming classes something like query, and another important section called criteria. Getting the point? Query and criteria, how we are going to use in our Hibernate applications here. Okay, so query basically what it will do, query is again one more interface here. So it is going to give the permission to the perform the queries against the databases here. Getting the point? And here it is going to control the queries, how the queries are executed. The query interface basically it will communicate with the database to perform the various operations here. And another point here, it is going to control the execution of this particular query here. Okay, this is the 2 important information we can understand regarding this particular query interface here. And internally, so whatever the query objective we are going to create here, the query instance, it is used to bind this particular query parameter. So if you are trying to make the customized parameter like conditional parameters, so it is going to bind those parameters internally. Get in the point? So something like limit the number of result, the number of result it is going to return by this particular query interface, and finally execute this particular query here. So these are some additional informations we are going to get from this particular query interfaces. Basically, the query interface it is going to allow the various operations on this particular databases, and along with this it is going to provide the control how this particular query is going to execute it. And using this particular query object, we are going to provide the query parameter and limit the number of result. Getting the point? And along with this, it is going to execute this particular queries here. Whatever the queries we are going to create with help of this particular query interface, those queries are going to execute it internally. So we'll see most of the example with help of this particular query and criteria, how it is going to work internally. And so criteria is also very similar to this particular query interface here, and it is going to work on the Java related object here. So whatever the query we are going to create, the conditional queries with help of this particular criteria will mostly focus more about the Java object. With help of this particular Java object, we are going to create the queries here inside the query criteria. Okay, sorry, not the query criteria, inside the criteria. So query basically it will give you the string related, and the criteria will provide the object related queries here. So this is the main differences between query and criteria. And after this we are going to discuss about the callback. The callback interfaces basically it will try to receive the notification when something happen inside this particular Hibernate, or we can call it as a is something happen on the objects here. So whatever the object we are trying to modify or insert something. Now, if anything is like this is basically events we can call it here. Event basically if you're trying to modify data, if you're trying to delete the data, getting the point. So this particular events are going to trigger. So this particular what are the events we are having here, and the event as I explained here, life cycle. Getting the point. So life cycle basically this is one of the event interface here, and another one is validable. Validatable. Okay, this is another important information. We need to understand how it is going to work internally. Okay, so this is all about the main interfaces here. It is going to provide the information if something is happen on the object here, the specific object, so that we can easily understand what kind of data it is updated, what kind of the data is deleted, so what kind of data we are trying to load, each and every information we can capture with the help of this particular two interfaces here. Okay, we'll see how these two interfaces are going to work internally. And the last one, what I suggested here, type interface. The type interface basically, it is a one of the fundamental and powerful interface. It will try to provide the conversion, like a database object into the Java object here. So the Java object into the database column. Because if you see, so in our the previous example, we created the message class. We come up with a long ID and long ID, string one property, and another one is object property. So this particular properties internally, it is going to convert it with the help of this particular type related sections here. So if you want to customize this, you can implement this. So otherwise, by default, Hibernate will give you the more information about the type conversion. Getting the point. So whatever I'm explaining is this particular life cycle and validatable and type. These three interfaces we can explicitly we need to implement, and then only we are going to get the event information as well as the particular type related sections here. Getting the point. Now we'll try to identify how this particular section is going to work internally one by one example. Now what we need to understand here, the basic configurations here. Whatever we identified here, something like the basic configuration. Now if you see, these are all the basic configurations. Okay, configuration, session factory, session and transaction. This particular section we can call it as the basic configuration here. Now how we are creating a session factory object here. So in order to create this particular session factory, first we need to create the single instance of this particular configuration. So without the configuration, we cannot create the session factory because we are having some dependency hierarchy here. Configuration internally it is having the session factory. Session factory internally it is having the session, and the session internally it is having this particular transaction. So these are all the dependency object we are having here. Okay, but first what we need to understand, in order to create this particular session factory, we need to create the configuration. So during this particular application initialization, now what we are doing is we are trying to create this particular configuration by specifying the mapping and the configuration document here. Okay, so once this particular configured, the configuration instance is used to create the session factory here. So without the configuration, we cannot create the session factory. Okay, so how we are creating? We provided the configuration file. After providing this particular configuration file, we are creating this particular session factory here. Okay, this is simple information we can understand here. Okay, now observe here, and what we are providing here, basically we are trying to providing the configuration document as well as mapping document. Now if you see this Hibernate cfg.xml, so where this particular section is available inside our source directory. So yesterday we created the particular information inside this particular source directory. Now you can see Hibernate. Where is Hibernate? So here we are having hibernate.cfg.xml. So what is the information it is containing here? So it is containing database specific related sections here. Database specific related section. Now you can see the dilate related information. So dilate basically it will try to generate the database specific queries here, because the queries also we are not going to generate here. Internally, Hibernate is going to take care of generating this particular queries here. But to generate this particular queries, what we need to provide? We need to provide this particular dilate here. So each and every database we are going to have the specific dilate information. And another one is driver and URL, username and password we have here. So we already discussed about this particular section in the previous examples here. But what we can discuss here, the another important section, getting the point, another important section here. So HBM to DDL. Getting the point. This is important. HBM to DDL dot auto. What exactly this particular property will do here? This particular property internally, it will try to create the data like tables if the tables are not available. If the tables are available, it will try to update the table. Getting the point. If you are trying to modify something inside this particular hibernate.hbm.xml file, if the table is already existed, if you added only new column. Okay, when you added this particular new column, what you need to understand here, instead of recreating this particular table, it will try to modify the table and it will add the specific column whatever we added. So this is the important section we can understand here, update here. Okay, and here the SQL, the show underscore SQL true. Now what I'm doing is, if you want to show the what kind of the SQLs are generated in our Hibernate application, we can use this particular property. It will try to show the particular property in our console. Okay, these are all the specific properties we used here. And finally, mapping document here. So whatever this particular mapping document we are using here, now you can see, so class attribute, this is important here. This particular class now I'm trying to use it into this particular table name called message here. Okay, ID attribute, it will try to provide the primary key related sections here. So ID attribute is the primary key related section. And generator we discussed here yesterday, it will try to create the increment, like automatically the values are going to increment. We cannot perform any explicit actions on this particular IDs. And this is the column we are using, and this is the many to one relations we implemented, because the message related section we are going to contain multiple the dependency messages here. So yesterday, what is the example we discussed here, and here we can understand. Select star from message here. Now you can see we have a two records here. First record we created, and the second record whenever I'm trying to create here, I am appending with this particular first record. So what happened this particular first record here? What happened this particular first record? So it is now having the dependency object. Next to message related section, it is going to provide this particular information here. Okay, this is all about the important information we need to understand here. So first record, I think it is deleted. No. Okay. Now observe here. So we have a two records we are having here. Now finally, now what I will do here, we are going to provide this particular HBM.xml. So why we need to use this particular HBM.xml? Getting the point? Because this is the extension internally Hibernate is going to use to create the table along with the columns here. Okay. Now you can see here we can go for this particular another important section inside the main class. So inside this particular configuration, what we can do here, we can call this particular add resource. Add resource, we can provide this particular resource name. Now, what happens this particular resource name? If where this particular file is available, we can provide this particular information here. Okay. Now, what I will do inside this particular configuration, I'm going to remove this particular mapping resource. Okay, this mapping resource I commented here. Now finally I'm copying this, the mapping information, and here I'm going to use. Now you can see again we are trying to inserting one more record here. So we are trying to select the record and we are trying to load the max information, and we are inserting, and we are updating this particular information here. Okay, so these are all the very important section we need to understand here, how it is performing here. So and the final important section what we can understand here, add resource. So this is another important section we can understand here. So whenever if you're not interested to provide the mapping information inside the configuration, what we can do, we can add this particular add resource. So this particular add resource also, it is going to take care of this particular table creation related information. Now if I'm going to run this particular query, now you can see what happening internally. So this is the object we are trying to create. So first object we created new message, and the second object also we created, and now we created third object here. Getting the point? Now we created third object. So this is the way of creating this particular objects here. Now internally what we can understand here, along with this particular section, if you're not interested here, the configurations here, now what we can do here, we can move on to the add class here. Getting the point? We can move on to the add class. So now I'm not interested to make this particular resource sections. I commented this. Now again I'm trying to call add class here. So what is the class we can add here? Something like message.class. Now here this is important. Now you can see inside this particular configuration, again we remove this particular the mapping document, and here I'm not using any resource here. So I'm trying to use only the add class here. Whenever I'm trying to use this particular add class, now what happens internally, we need to understand here. Now you can see com.spring.hibernate.message.hibernate.xml not found. What you understand this particular error message is like exception message, what you can understand, whatever the resource we provided, the resource is trying to expecting inside the package here, inside this particular package. But where we provided this particular mapping document, we provided under this particular source directory. Getting the point? This is important here. So inside this particular source director is not looking here. It is trying to look where this particular message class is available. Where this particular message class is available, in the same location, the mapping file also it is expecting here. For example, now you can see here I provided this particular message.hbm.xml information, and now I'm going to run same example. Whenever I'm trying to run this particular same example, we'll try to identify how this particular objects here. Now you can see, so it is inserted one record here. Getting the point? Whatever the yesterday implemented the session.load and old message, new message, and old message dot set new message. So these are all the 4 steps we are doing here, and the 4 steps internally it is trying to implement this. So this is, we'll call it as the automatic dirty checking here. Without the session information, if you are in the same transaction, it will try to modify the based on our requirement here. Okay, but what we can understand here, add class. Though this is the important here. Whenever we are having multiple classes, basically what we will do, we'll call this particular add class method. We are going to specify the POJO class, or we can call it as the database related class. Okay, whatever the database we are going to use, those database related, the table related class we are going to use like this. And internally, it is going to append with message.hbm.xml, because we are providing class name here. Here we are providing this particular class name, and internally it is going to appended here. Okay, internally it is going to appended message.hbm.xml. So this is the hbm.xml. Internally it is going to take care of by adding this particular mapping document file here. Okay, now what we can understand here, we can discuss about the whatever the properties we provided, whatever this particular configuration property we provided here. This is important here. If you are not interested to use this particular XML configuration, we can move on to the the another important information, property file here. Okay, property file we can move, and we can add the same configuration. So what are the property file we are going to use it? So I will try to provide this particular property file. So let me provide this particular property information here. Where we are having so let me go to the property file we are going to load this. Now we'll see how this particular properties we have. Inside the Hibernate architecture, we need to copy our property file information. So this is the property file. So this particular property file we are going to use in place of this configuration file. Whatever we are using, the XML configuration, we'll try to modify this particular sections with the help of this particular property file. And how we are going to provide this particular property file here. Now I'm trying to creating this particular file here. This is important here. Okay, and here what we can provide here, something like Hibernate dot properties here. Hibernate dot properties, and here we can provide this particular section, Hibernate dialect, Hibernate connection driver class, and URL, username and password, so show scale, and finally Hibernate dot HBM to DDL here. Get in the pen. And this both this particular hibernate.config.xml file and hibernate.property file will perform the same here, but only the difference is here. So instead of updating this particular section inside the XML configuration, what we can do, we can add this particular property file. The property file we are going to use in the different locations. Get in the pen. But XML file we cannot use. But inside the XML, what is the option we can use it? Something like expression language. We can move on to this particular expression language. We can update this particular values here. Okay. So we discuss in the expression language in the Spring, the dollar we are going to provide the curly braces, and we can provide the key value here, so that the value automatically it is going to append it here. Now what I will do here, I'm going to use I'm not going to call this particular configuration. I'm not going to call the configuration section. Getting the point? This is important, we need to understand here. This is very important here. I'm not using any configuration. The config method I'm not calling it. So directly I'm going to run this example. Whenever I'm trying to run this particular example, so automatically it should load this particular section. But now you can see org Postgres SQL driver. What happened? Whatever we provided, it is wrong. Hibernate connection driver class name. So what is the key it is trying to use? So JDBC driver class not found. the org PostgreSQL. Why the driver class is not found? Anything we are missing from this? Hibernate connection dot driver class name org Postgres driver. Same thing only, right?
Is it the equal to, can go back to the other file?
So we are going to use the same only.
Yeah, is that the space is required? I guess that's not a problem.
Okay, what we can do, we'll copy this exception information and class not found exception. Now we'll run in the debug mode. We can understand from where we are getting this particular exceptions here. First, I will remove all the unwanted stuff, whatever we are using. Class not found here. Otherwise, okay, we can use this Hibernate exception. So we'll see from which location it is getting is related to the particular key or any another information. So if we are missing something, we can fix that. Otherwise, we'll try to move into the location in the different locations. Yes, class not found. I think this is only. So this is not the from where it is calling. Okay, add message only. Now we'll see. Class validator. I will remove the class not found. We'll see. Yeah, this is only it is getting driver class name. So org PostgreSQL driver class name. It is trying to load. Why we are getting this else section? Here we are having the class not found. And so we need to understand driver class we are getting a null. No JDBC. No, I think we are not getting the null. So we are getting this. Internally we are trying to load driver class name. Okay, org PostgreSQL driver. Maybe the message the key whatever we given it is trying to loading here, but it is because of I think we provided driver class. Let me see. Where is the pom.xml? So it is there Postgres here. Okay. Anyway, I think this one is giving me an exception. Yes, this one only it is giving me an exception. org. Okay, from where it is coming. So we'll see build session factory. What is the copy properties? What are the properties we are having? Oh, all the error we are getting. Connection. I thought how we can read. So we'll run one more time. We'll see. Okay, so now we are getting the different exception. Any property is missing. I hope it is related to the property only, but we'll fix that once we identify the exception. Okay, we'll go to this and click on this particular copy. Okay. So what are all the properties we are getting here? Java, file separator, JVM, line, specification, user script, runtime name user. So we are getting here username.user, hibernate.hbm to DDL, connection driver class we are getting, Java version, path we are getting, dilate also we are getting, So username Hibernate connection dot username Postgres. So I think the connection URL also we are getting same. So underscore SQL we are getting. Okay, I'm thinking here. So maybe whatever the key we are providing, maybe the key is wrong here. Let's see. So we'll identify this copy we are getting. Finally, we are moving into the build setting internal, the same property we are passing. And so settings we are creating, connection provider, and internally the create connection provider properties here. All the properties they are providing. Okay, connection dot configure. So it is calling with help of this particular all the properties. So here we are getting here because of this particular driver class name we are getting here. Why it is getting? Okay, first we'll try with this because the file properties are loading successfully only. org. I'm not sure like what we are missing. So because whatever we added, we have providing this. We'll see here what we are missing. Connection dot set properties we can provide. In order to connect the Postgres database, file step register the driver class name and so same we are doing here. Sometimes the jar in the class path environment will, but your application running in the class path. Okay. Tune the call for ignore. Okay. Maybe it is because of this particular Postgres jar only. So okay. Let me see. So jar is not identified in the class path, but in the Maven repository, we have the Postgres related section. Oh, here we are having Postgres SQL. I think this is not a problem. Why it is not identifying this? It should identify. Postgres driver, it is not found. Any version we need to use here? Let's see. It is not the Java problem. Use class path. Otherwise, inside the Spring Core, no. Oh, what happened? Why this particular file is not identifying here? It's a miracle. Okay, let me try in the IntelliJ ID, like how it is going to work. So it's the issue of this particular file, like the jar is available, but the jar is not loading here. So it should load basically, but why it is not loading? So we no need to set any path here. because the Maven internally it will try to set these sections here. You could also be download the jar, import into the manually. No, that is wrong here. We'll go for this. Okay, so here on we are having same. Now here I will run this example whether here it will work or not. So this is the previous batch example I had here, but now copy this particular file. Okay, I have this. I'm deleting this file cfg.xml and run this example. We'll see it should create the object in the database. If everything is goes successful, I think you're also getting the same. So it's issue the Postgres driver only, but I hope the driver is available here. Postgres. So I think it is not loading here. Is it because of the? Okay, let's see. Is it because of this particular whatever we are having Hibernate driver class name? I think the key we are using the different here. So let's see Hibernate connection. I will modify this particular key. Now we'll run the same example. So we are getting the dilate here. Now you can see, so it's because of this particular key we have issue. Whatever the key we have here, so this is the key issue. I think Hibernate connection dot dilate. Must be set with when no connection available. Okay, so the keys are not matching. Now what I will do, so whatever the keys we used in the previous batch, I will use that. So I hope I had the particular file here. Let me go to the GitHub. We'll see. I think not this. So maybe here we'll have strings. No. Where I had. So we need to check that particular this. Okay. Okay. So here we don't have not this. Let me find Hibernate. Hibernate dot properties. What we are using? Hibernate dot driver class name, connection URL. Where is the dialect here? So this is only the dialect we used here. Okay, it's correct only. But why we are getting any value we are missing? Same only.
Can you remove all the spaces in the that equal?
Okay, I think dialect version is not fine here. Whatever we are using, maybe it should come up with a PostgreSQL dialect. I will copy this files here. We'll see the required information we can update here. And we cannot use a create and drop. We go for the update. And schema, right now we cannot use this particular schema. Later we can see. Okay, so I think everything is same. See, is it because of some key, like whatever the key we are using, it is not matching it. Now, I modified this. If you observe, what we miss here, we'll check that anything we are missing. Hibernate SQL is same, and Hibernate dialect also we are using the same. So connection password, so connection username, and connection URL, and driver class name. Okay, so because of this, maybe it is working here now. So as you suggested, if I'm going to remove this,
One more is there, one more space on the line number 3.
yes, no. So
Here you used the line number 7 dot auto HVM to DDL dot auto.
okay, the key we are missing, and let's see, some spaces also we have. Yes.
Loading.
Okay, so because of some spaces as well as the key, whatever we are using this particular key, it should match the particular, the whatever the property we are going to use in our application. But anyway, now we use the cfg.xml, and now we are moving into the hibernate.property file. Okay, so this particular file we can use inside the source directory. So after this particular, the property file, again we are using this section. So this is I want to provide the information. And another one, what we can do, this is compared to this particular XML configuration. So properties are very important here, because nowadays this all the property file we are keeping in the different locations. Like it's one of the important example, cloud. In the cloud, we are going to provide all the properties information. So we'll give you this particular key with help of our value annotation. So whatever the value annotation we discussed in the correlated example where we identified, I think in the Spring Core annotation. Remember? Yeah. So now you can see here we are using the value annotation. So inside this particular value, now what I'm doing here, I'm using the static value. But now what we will do, we'll remove this particular static value, and we'll go for this particular expression. And inside this particular expression, we'll provide this particular key. Whatever this particular key we are having, we'll provide like this. So whenever I'm providing, it will load this particular key Getting the point? So for this particular key, whatever the value we have here, the update value, it is going to store into this particular song property. Okay, but where this particular properties we are going to store, we are going to store in the different locations. So rather than keeping in the same the particular file here, because this particular information we can update manually whenever we want to change. For example, this database configuration I'm going to use for the dev applications. Getting the point? The Postgres database I'm going to use for the dev instance, like dev environment. But the production environment, now I'm going to use the MongoDB or DynamoDB or Oracle databases. Now what we will do, this configurations will change here. We are not going to modify any data here. Only we'll modify this particular values here. The keys are same, only we'll modify this particular values here. So this is the values based on the specific data type, whatever the database, whatever we are going to use. So we are going to modify here. Okay. So this is the property file is important compared to the our XML. But in the XML also, what we can do, we can provide the whatever I suggested here with a expression language. So this is also will work here, but the property file is less loading in terms of loading this particular XML file here. Getting the point? Internally, the XML will take some more memory compared to this particular property file. So this is the another way of writing this particular example here. Now replace this with help of this particular same whatever we used in the earlier. Now coming back to here, we identify the XML configurations and the properties configuration. Now we'll try to identify how we can come up with a different example. And here, so inside this particular configuration, we need to identify what exactly it is trying to discuss here. So as we discuss here, so simple example here, let me go to the configurations here. Now you can see these are all the specific database information, and whatever the mapping we are using here, this particular mapping is going to create the whatever the mapping file we are going to provide. Based on this particular mapping file, the specific table is going to create it inside the database here. Okay, how many like model classes, for example, so message class I used here, but in the real time scenarios we are going to create multiple classes. Okay, we are going to create multiple classes. For those classes here, we are going to write all the mapping file. Now you can think here how much it is important here. So it is going to increase again this particular cfg.xml file. So instead of increasing this, what we can do, whenever we are running this application, so this is another option we can call add class here. Okay, add class here. So otherwise, when we are trying to discuss about the annotations here, directly we'll use a entity related annotation, table related annotation, column related annotation. So whatever we are having right now, same thing. Like ID, we have an annotation. So instead of this particular property, we are going to use a column annotation. So we have a table annotation. Okay, for class related, we are going to use the entity. So entity is going to work as the same class, and the table, same thing as it is how it is working. So ID, it is going to generate the primary key, and the column, whatever the column we are trying to specify here. And the same thing, we have a different annotation, many to one, like many to many, and one to one. These are all the three types of annotations we have. We'll discuss later on this. But so same thing, whatever the mapping document we are using, same way we are going to have the annotations internally. Okay. Now these are about the simple information. Now I want to discuss about the logging information. The logging is very important. We need to understand here. So if you see here, we don't have any logging information. This sections, the SQL related section, we generated the property here. Whatever the property we enable here, because of this particular property, this information we are able to get here. Along with this, now I want to find out the logging information, how the Hibernate is internally connecting, like a configuration object, how it is creating, and session factory, session related sections, how it is creating. So those information we can identify with help of this particular logging related sections here. Now what I will do here, I will create the one file here. So what is the file we can create here? Log4j dot Okay, log4j.property file I'm adding it. Now, so I will copy the log4j related sections. What are the log4j related section we need to copy? So now if you go to this, so here I have a log4j properties here. Now I'm copying these sections here and I will paste it here. Now you can see, first we'll identify what happening this. Now if you go to this, so org Apache log4j dot rolling file appender. So this section, this particular section, whatever the logging messages we are going to have here, the message will copy into the file here. The file, it should be available in the particular path. So I'm removing this particular path. We'll create a one more file here. So in the source directory. Okay, so this particular file where it is available. Now I will copy this. Okay, this is the log4j file and the maximum file size we can give how much you are interested. And so backup indexes, basically it is like a cache related backup here, and we need to use the pattern like how we want to print this. So here time frame milliseconds minimum getting the pen, this is the time frame we are having. So I will explain this how it is going to provide this particular time frame here. And the same thing I'm using console, this particular appender, it will print on the console, and this particular section will print on the message on the our file here. So this is the root logger we need to provide here. So what is the root logger we are going to use here? First one, we are using the information. We have a different types of logging frameworks here. What are the different types of logging here? First one is info, second one is debug. Okay, third one is we can go for the error, and fourth one, basically we cannot use the remain fatal, but these three are the very important here. Wherever you go in the real-time applications, we'll use this particular these three only. So whenever this error related section, we'll use inside the catch blocks. Okay, only it will show the error related information. So debug related information, basically how the application is functioning internally. So those basically inside the method or inside the constructor. Get in the pen. If we want to debug the application, we can provide the debug. So information, basically the class is called, get in the pen. The service class is called, the controller class is called, the repository class is called, like otherwise the template related classes are called. So we can provide inside this particular information. But inside the template class, the specific method is called, and these are all the specific values. For example, save method is called inside the Hibernate template. Okay, now what happened? Hibernate template save method is called with some parameters. So those parameters we are going to provide inside the debug mode here. Okay, these are all the like level of like log4j we are having here. So using this particular level, we are going to provide the applications here, because in the real-time applications we are not going to write system.out.println in any location. In a single line also we are not going to write here. So now you can think here how much the system.out.println is important here. Everything, if I want to configure any messages here, we are going to use this particular logging frameworks here. Okay, log4j, we have a different frameworks here. Log4j, SLF4j, logback, getting the pen. So we will try to identify one by one, but all the logging frameworks are going to simulate, but only few of the different functionality each and every the logging framework here. Okay, any framework we are going to use the information and the debug and the error. Getting the point. These are all the three levels in the most of the cases we are going to provide. So the first one I am providing information. Now you can see I'm giving the package information, org Hibernate. So org Hibernate related section, it will start info, and org Hibernate dot type. So the type related we are using the all. So all is nothing but it will work on the all the level of the logging frameworks here. Okay, these are all the file appender and the console appender we are using here. And whenever we are using, so what is the jar we need to add here? What is the jar we need to add? So basically we need to identify whether the commons logging we have or not. Commons logging is important. Now you can see here commons collection, commons logging is there. Getting the point. So commons logging 1.2, it is available here. Now we'll run the same example. We'll see. So what happens internally? It is going to provide the logging information or not? No, it is not providing. Providing this particular information. So what we are missing is this is important. Even though it's not providing exception, it is not doing any exception. But now, how we can deal with the file. Okay, so to go to this here, we can see the system form again. Okay, we'll see after adding this. Okay, so now you can see we are getting a no such method error. So what is a no such method error we are getting? A something like a static logger binder. Getting the point. So static logger binder we are getting it. Now we'll identify whether this particular class is not available. So it is there, but the problem, this particular get singleton method is not available, I hope. So let's see, here also we have a, it is a from the starting bubble inside the simple for why there. Let me I think I did this. Why method is not coming in the runtime. So upgrade your binding to 1.6 to 2.0. We'll go to the PALM version. What is the version we are using? So 1.5 we are using. So we'll see what are the latest versions we are having. Maven repository and paste this particular SLF4J, and this is we are going to use. And these are all the beta versions. So what is the version is expecting? 1.2, 2.0. Configuration, logger factory. Why it is throwing? Because the method is available. It should not throw any exception basically. We'll try with the 1.8 version. No, it is not at all working. Anything? So SLF code J logging binder for the details. Fail to load static logger binder. Okay. So this is the issue we are getting here. Let me what we are missing here. So I hope why we are getting this. What we are missing here. SLF4J. Is there any dependencies expecting here? Web spare. They are using the different versions here. You will have the following dependencies here. Solve my issue. Okay, so they are providing two versions we need to add here. Okay, we'll go to this. Internally, it is expecting core also. So this is totally, it's related to the version related sections we are getting here. So we need to identify the what kind of the exception. Now you can see we are able to see the loggers here. Getting the point. Now finally, the whatever the logger messages we provided, we are able to see all the messages here. So earlier we did not get this particular logger information. Now you can see Hibernate common annotation. It's trying to use this particular version. After this, so we are using the JDK 1.4. The times handling it. Now we have a like message.hvm.xml file. So it is trying to read the mapping from the resources. So this is the path of this particular resource information. Now you can see we are trying to load the Hibernate properties. So what are the properties we are loading it? These are all the properties. So update, dilate here. Now you can see password. It is not showing the password. Just it is coming with the stars here. So this is the matching we are going to get here. And these are all the properties, whatever we provided, property file. And after this, so no JDBC driver, it is trying to load connection the properties here. Now it is connecting the Postgres here with the versions here. And these are all the connection related information. Now, so session factory, how the session factory it is creating. After this, we will identify the schema related. Right now, we don't have any schema. The schema, default schema it is using it. Now you can see column. What is the table we are having? Public.message table. And these are all the columns here. Okay. Now it is selecting and inserting, updating. This is the SQL query. So this is important here. This is the way of adding the dependencies here and to get the logger messages here. Now if I'm going to show you this, so we are not getting anything here. Let me refresh why we are not getting. Again, only consoler it is working. Why the file it is not working? So what we are given? File only, right? So it should work here. File appended dot file. Spring-core. Okay. So maybe path is different. Maybe this one we need to use. I'm going to run same example one more time. So we'll wait once this example is completed. Now you can see it is completed. We'll try to refresh one time. So now you can see in the log4j whatever we provided here, logs are coming here. Same like whatever the log we are able to see in the console, same information we are able to see in the file also. Okay, file give you the like future purposes also. If you miss something, we can come on to this particular specific file. We can read the where we are getting an exception, what is the issue about it. But console, once application is stopped here, we cannot get the logging information here. Okay, the file it is give you the more advantages compared to this particular like a console appender. So any questions? Any questions regarding whatever we discussed so far? Okay. So if you don't have anything, so now I'm going to stop the session up to here. Now, so tomorrow we'll discuss about the remaining example, like how we can come up with we have a lot of information we need to discuss, like mapping associations we need to discuss here. So those section will continue tomorrow. Okay. So if you don't have anything, we'll see you in the tomorrow session.
Thank you.